what is the Internet of Things? Most people know what it is. Some still don't. Very simplified definition for today. When everyday objects have network connectivity. So just hold that in your head real quick. So assumptions. 25 billion connected devices in 2015. There's going to be twice that by 2020. Today's user experience. Now, I'm not talking about the web development definition of user experience. I'm talking about the definition of user experience that all of you care more about. And inarguably, we could say that it spans online and off like never before. Today's average attention span has now dropped to 0.000001 seconds. Obviously not a real fact, but the fact that everybody's now back on their cell phones and I've only been up on stage for 90 seconds, I think you know what I'm talking about. 87% of millennials use 2 to 3 devices at least once per day. I'm a millennial and I don't even know what that means. Digital marketers are thinking more and more about the physical world, and experiential marketers are thinking more and more about digital. Now, at the same time, you have creative, digital, social, and PR agencies stepping on each other's toes more than ever before. If anybody wants to argue against that, you're probably lying or selling something, because this is totally real and totally true. Lastly, connectivity, still a challenge. Regulation, still evolving rapidly or not so rapidly in some cases and contexts. That's a whole nother talk, but just hold that in mind. So, how do you win as event professionals? I have no idea. Luckily, I know a lot of people that are much, much smarter than me, a lot of really awesome agencies, a lot of really cool early stage technology, and I'm going to do a rapid fire rundown. So let's start with branded products. So this was for the NHL. This is Budweiser up in Canada. This is a real product that consumers could buy for about $30 Canadian. Connect it to your Wi-Fi. It looks like a little siren, right? Connect it to your Wi-Fi. Install it in your bathroom, in your den, at your office desk, whatever. Anytime your favorite NHL hockey team nets a goal in real life, the siren goes off. So think about this for a second. This is a large brand. This is a product who has now not only embedded their own product and brand into someone's home, they've also had them pay for it. Holy SHIT. That is amazing, right? That's the dream. Who's seen this before? No one. OK, so this is the Buddy Cup with an umlaut, presumably launched in Germany. So what happens is you authenticate with LinkedIn or Facebook. You go to a bar. Anytime you cheers with somebody else, you will automatically request their friendship on a social platform. So baking digital into an experience, a contemporary experience that everybody's very familiar with, cheersing, right? And now it's magic and behind the scenes like technology should be. Platforms that can do things like read ambient data, like how many beers are in my refrigerator, what is the average drinkability. These are all very, very cheap to produce now once you actually have the form factor. Bud Light actually just launched that. Prototypes of things that use things like Bluetooth. Instead of, this is a version of the social cooler where the first one that we built was predicated on actually checking in or mentioning a specific hashtag or engaging on social media to cause something physical, in this case, a cooler to open up. This one just uses Bluetooth. If you have 5 people with this event app, presumably, opened up, right, standing within 2 or 3 feet of this cooler, then it would open up and everybody gets beers, and then you could think about generating revenue by having Dr. Pepper versus Pepsi versus Coke vie to who gets to be in the magical cooler kind of a thing. This is what a prototype of one of them actually looks like for Diet Coke, for example. Now you see things like forcing social media into the equation. So a Twitter-activated vending machine has been deployed 3, 4, 500 times now at this point. I would argue it's not quite enough at this point. We're guilty of doing them ourselves. This was launched out in Belgium. So this is what I would argue is sort of the next step, right? Instead of forcing something like social media, which there's nothing wrong with as a social media agency, but again, building in that normalized, ubiquitous experience, like if you walk up to this machine and you yawn like that guy's yawning right there, a cup of coffee is dispensed. So you're tired, you want a cup of coffee, you walk up to this machine, uses facial recognition, you yawn, and you magically get a cup of coffee. Again, I talked about some of these devices as revenue generating. So this is an example of the Washington Redskins. Branded lockers, you tweet at it, it magically opens up. It's a photo booth style experience. You put all the gear on, and then it automatically triggers a countdown and takes your photo and pushes it out to social media. The Redskins are now selling a watermark to Comcast Sports Network, Bank of America, Geico, and on down the line. This is a prototype that we launched last year that we're working on right now. So a little behind the scenes at what kind of components are involved here.
Everyone, this is Zach from My Strategy Labs, and we're back with our latest experiment, the selfie. the self-enhancing live feed imaging engine. The selfie is constructed using a two-way mirror, a webcam, and LEDs that are embedded behind the mirror. Inside, we have a Mac Mini powering the facial recognition software and an Arduino controlling the LEDs. Let's take it for a spin.
So you stand in front of it, takes your photo, automatically pushes it out to social media. Again, that watermark giving brands and venues and event producers the ability to consider this as a revenue-generating asset. Some of the components here, as promised. So first prototypes with a Mac Mini, which is by far the most expensive component of this entire setup. We're looking at using a Raspberry Pi, which is less than $100, can almost do exactly the same thing. We have explored using, Canon 60, like $2,800 cameras, but you could, in theory, use a webcam if you're okay with the photo quality not being quite as good. Going back to round out some branded products here, you're going to hear me talk a lot about if this, then that, which is itself a platform that we're going to get to at the end. But this is a funny one because it's the reverse. So it's if you don't do something, then something happens. So this is in a bathroom. If you walk past this thing and you don't push the soap dispenser, then an alarm goes off, right? Here's another one. So this is an alarm clock where if you hit the snooze button, it will automatically donate money to the political party that you don't support. This launched about 3 weeks ago. It was originally called the Switch and then quickly became known as the Netflix and Chill button. I think what's interesting about this, and so you push the button and it brings the lights down, it orders pizza, it turns on Netflix, right? What's interesting about this is they open sourced, so to speak, the plans and the process and how one might create something like this. So it's not just launching this thing that, yes, maybe you could get in a contest or maybe buy for $100 or whatever it is, but being able to build it yourself, that's where all of this is really going. So let's take it up a level, connected campaigns. This was launched, I believe, by DDB out in Auckland, New Zealand for the launch of Game of Thrones Season 5. So last year, King Joffrey, one of those vehemently hated characters in television history. So this giant statue was dropped right in downtown Auckland. What you don't see, there's this big rope tied around the waist and a big crank. And what was happening is with every mention of the hashtag down with the king, the crank would turn one notch, and then on around the millionth tweet, the statue was toppled. So again, incentivizing something in digital or on social to create this oddly purgative, awesome physical experience. This was an Intel campaign out in Tokyo for a simple social sweepstakes. So it was on Facebook. It was, let's give away a bunch of Ultrabooks. Only what was happening is the big, beautiful Intel arm was spelling out people's names, whoever was actually participating, and then sort of like the arcade nickel game, the names were pushed over, and then whoever was up, whose name's letters caused the computer to slide over onto the conveyor belt, won that, and then it would reset, and it was live streamed and beautiful and just happening all the time. This was for Miller Coors Red's Apple Ale, so a big warehouse, and the internet was controlling a hacked baseball pitching machine to shoot these red rubber balls or apples or fake apples to try and hit targets and win prizes in real time. So it was the Red's Apple launcher. You go to a microsite. That's what it looked like. You get 3 shots if you authenticate with Facebook, right? So you get all that big, beautiful data associated with the social campaign. Only the internet is controlling something in physical space in real time, and hundreds of thousands of people are actually able to participate in it synchronously. Similarly, going back to games or arcade games, right? So the skill crane. So this was actually launched at Universal Studios, but originally on the internet, where through Facebook, the internet was able to, arrow keys and spacebar to move the crane around through a live streamed interface. And then it was launched in person. So, we're building out an arcade at our office right now that's going to be a 4-player arcade. 2 people are playing in person against 2 people on the internet. Classic 90s arcade games. You look at, something slightly more at home to everybody in this room, something like an event, what kind of installation could incentivize a social action or a digital action or bring it all together. This is one out in Singapore. 2 people stand in front of it, authenticate with LinkedIn, and only then will it dispense, 2 perfect cappuccinos or espressos. This was back in Australia on a beach, and at key points, this was launched by Tourism Australia, at key points, if you stand at a particular place, it takes a gigapixel selfie. So the world's biggest selfie, gigapixel photography, it's 17 grand, I think, to actually just get the cameras, but these were fixed in place, and then you can zoom in like 88 times. Emerging tech and some more costs. So if this, then that. I referenced it before. Certainly something to check out if you're not familiar with it. They raised, I think, 40 million last year. So where you can create your own recipes connecting software together. So it used to be primarily just software, right? So if I like a song on SoundCloud, then it'll automatically get dropped into a Dropbox folder. Just very simple recipes you could create and subscribe to. But then they started adding hardware channels and hardware-focused recipes. So for smart home and for connected devices, to be able to connect software and people that use software to these things. This is something that launched in Norway on Kickstarter with huge success. It's just little open source buttons. So these physical triggers for the Internet of Things, or physical triggers for just about anything you could typically do with software. Some more building blocks. Arduino is by far the most popular. It's a microcontroller. Raspberry Pi is actually more of a computer, and again, these are less than $100. Tech Shop is in 6 cities now nationwide. It's a shared makerspace or co-working space for hardware technologists primarily, but there's millions of dollars worth of equipment here that you can get for hundreds or a couple grand a month for membership and training and classes, laser cutters and water jets and industrial size 3D printers and on down the line. This I think is super interesting. So Amazon Dash launched last year and then really this year. These are $5 buttons. They're Amazon ordering machines. It's somewhat deviously brilliant on Amazon's part, but people are now hacking them to do different things, right? So these are $4 a pop. You could have them built into the seat backs of every seat in this room, and could have my face on it, and every time you push the button, it launches a tomato at me, right? I don't know, like whatever you guys want to do. So this is very, very cheap to do now. Capacitive touch interfaces. This came out of MIT. It's called Perch. It's, I think, about 7 grand a pop. Turns any flat surface into a capacitive touch interface. Now it works vertically as well and can trigger things like video. So if you have you pick up that shoe and it would trigger the associated video content with that shoe. Magic Leap is very new. These guys secretly raised $500 million, a big chunk of it from Google. It's next generation augmented reality to really fool people into thinking that digital things are happening in the real world. Very new, very cool. It sort of is delivering on the promise of augmented reality, like Oculus is starting to deliver on the promise of virtual reality. Gesture and motion-based activations, so controlling things like drones with a wristband or a simple ring, giving your attendees and your guests superpowers is a highly sponsorable and very interesting dynamic. Intel, of course, getting into the game. This is their smallest chip. It has really it's tiny, so it's perfect for wearables. Will be very cheap, comes out later this year. And I think what's interesting about this, it has sort of one of the more advanced accelerometers and gyroscope. So we're actually building a prototype to make air guitar real. So with a little wristband or a guitar pick, you could be generating noise and drums, kick drums, and any sound you would want. More example of breakdown of costs here. This is Volkswagen's one of our clients. Very interesting time to be working with Volkswagen. So this is the social dash that measures Twitter performance on a little custom dash. So wood, $100 because we got some nice wood. PCBs, a printed circuit board. Plastic and LEDs, $20. So less than a couple $100 here. We're creating these things. This is the idea to create a prototype of a table that's sort of the cell phone or smartphone free experience. So if 4 people put their devices in this table, then a bottle will rise up out of the center to enjoy a beverage without the annoying habits that we all are slave to at this point. So we want to prototype something like this. So we did it ourselves. And this is just a little prototype. Pops up magically, right? Again, a couple $100 here. Microcontroller, the cabinet. We could have gotten an IKEA cabinet or something. A motor. All right, I have 15 seconds left. So what's next? Brands will continue to launch products as campaigns and campaigns as experiments. Live streaming, which we didn't even really get to, will continue to grow as a platform for real-time interaction. best of breed example here is probably Old Spice, where the internet on Twitch was able to control through the Twitch chat what this guy should do out in the woods in real life, in real time. New ways to visualize data, especially via touch and virtual reality. So here's we do a lot of work with Facebook. Here's a prototype of the new trends visualization. That's what's hot on Facebook right now. So you can dive into the different layers of what content is actually hot and trending on Facebook. And then the next step that we're doing is building it into Oculus to make people feel like they're Tom Cruise in Minority Report and being fully immersed in the virtual representation of your data. Privacy will, of course, remain a chief concern, and some things will certainly scare people away. Someone hacked a Jeep 2 months ago, 3 months ago. That's horrifying. No one wants that. Anybody got time for that? Lastly, how do you win? I would say you should create product, services, and experiments that you actually know people want instead of just guessing.